I had this favorite magician, and he's like, I can't be a magician without an audience. I can't do magic tricks in front of a mirror. Just like a magician can't be a magician without an audience. This exploration of self can't happen alone. It happens as you relate to other people. We are who we are through intersubjective relationships with people, places, and things. The relationship I have with Legendary, I feel like helps me feel safe enough to keep pulling those demons out and knowing that there's a group of people that'll catch me almost like a magic carpet when it gets to be sometimes too much. They'll just hold that space for me.
Welcome to the Legendary Podcast, an invitation into intimate, soul-bearing conversations with the gods and goddesses of our Burning Man camp, the legendary playground of the gods. Here, you'll meet the visionaries, wisdom keepers, heart-centered entrepreneurs, and edge walkers who make up this extraordinary soul family. Together, we'll journey through the turning points that shaped us, the failures, the victories, the breakdowns, and the breakthroughs, and what it truly means to rise and build something sacred from the ashes. If you've been searching for your people, if you've longed to find a community that inspires you to rise, you found your tribe. So join us now for another sacred journey. Welcome to the playground of the gods. Welcome to Legendary. Hello, legends, and welcome back to the Legendary Podcast. I'm here today with Pardis Mahdavi, beautiful sister of the Legendary camp. I'm Celine DaCosta. I am your guide and your host for today's journey. And today we're going to dive deep into Pardis' story, see what this woman is about. I have heard rumors. I have met her briefly. And I will be honest, Pardis, I don't know much about you. And that is why I love these interviews, because
Amazing.
I like to think of me and whoever else gets to know you is sitting in the seat right now where I am, and I get to surrogate and get to know you with very fresh eyes for the very first time. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Me too. So for those of you who are meeting you, Pardis, for the first time, can you share a bit more about what is it that you do for life, for work, and what makes you come alive?
Wow. All really big questions. I like it. You just go right
I
for
don't like
it.
small
Go
questions.
right. Let's just dive deep. Let's just go for it. Let's see. I describe myself in the following two phrases. I'm a recovering academic and a mystic cowgirl.
Ooh, that's really juicy,
yeah.
both.
Yeah. So recovering academic, I was 25 years in the academy. So 25 years ago, I got my PhD and multiple masters at Columbia. I got my PhD in medical anthropology. And medical anthropology essentially is the study of the connections between soul, mind, body, consciousness, and looking at how different cultures approach these different connective tissues or cosmic linkages. So I became a professor for many years. I taught courses in sexuality, a lot of courses in sexuality. I taught courses on consciousness. I taught courses on migration. And, then I rose the ranks in the academy. I was a professor for 11 years. I became a dean. I was a dean, at Pomona College, then a dean at the University of Denver, and dean at Arizona State. Then I was the provost at the University of Montana. Then I was a university president. And the higher up I went, actually, the more unhappy I was. And the farther I got from feeling like I was in alignment. In the process, wrote 9 books. So on the outside, I was sort of like the picture of success and achievement. And on the inside, I was just in more and more and more pain. And my pain happened to dovetail with the pain of everybody who was around me, the students primarily. And I was in my career dealing with one mental health crisis after another amongst the students, and many, many suicides, unfortunately, and having to be the one who, helps to award the degrees posthumously. And, that was a really profound mirror for me. What got me through all of that was turning back to my roots, turning back to the experiences I had in Iran, being originally from Iran. My first book was on Iran, about sexual revolution. And while I was there, I actually learned to ride horses. When my depression and anxiety just hit a pretty major spike, I turned back to both the realm of the horses and the realm of consciousness, all the things I had been taught to try to find my way, and discovered my grandmother's story, discovered all these insane stories about my background and my life. But I like to say it was the horses and the mysticism that pulled me through.
Beautiful. Thank you. I
Mm-hmm.
can feel the depth of that. There are several layers that I'd love to unpack with you today.
Yeah.
Let's begin by tracing the roots, which
Mm-hmm.
is who you were before you became the professor, the leader, the visionary. You mentioned that you're from Iran. You mentioned that growing up, and as you were in going into academia, you were just performing, achieving on the outside, but feeling this really big pain on the inside. And so, where did that come from?
I think it's a combination. You talk about the roots. I'm a child of the revolution. My parents came here. My mom was pregnant with me when the revolution in Iran was unfolding. And so she came here. And so I was born in the United States. My mom was, you know, pregnant with me when they left Iran. And the plan had been to, for them to, my mom was very young. She met my father. The plan had been to raise us, in the home country, in the old country. And then Iran was no longer the country that it was. And of course, it's interesting that we're having this conversation
Mhm.
today, because so many of that pain from back then, 46 years ago, is coming back right now. So,
And for those who are listening months later, can you give context as to what just happened a couple of days ago?
yeah. So, about 10 days ago, Israel attacked Iran by launching an unprovoked attack, and has led to very serious and significant violent suffering. People are trying to get out. It escalated very quickly. And then on Saturday, President Donald Trump attacked Iran as well. An unprecedented United States involvement in the conflict. A ceasefire was announced last night. However, it remains to be seen whether Iran and Israel are going to accept that ceasefire. And so I'm literally watching my home country, live, uh, be destroyed. And it's very painful. And it sort of takes me back to that time, when I was young and, born here, and initially growing up in Minnesota, because that's where, where my dad got a job. But growing up, in the middle of, Iran hostage crisis, Iran Contra, and constantly seeing, my two countries at war, constantly seeing the United States narrate Iran as this great threat, Iran narrate the United States as the great Satan, seeing images of, the United States flag being burned in Iran, seeing images of Americans condemning Iran. I mean, what does that mean for those of us who grow up with Iran and the United States in one body? If Iran and the United States are constantly at war, what does that mean if you are both? And so that liminal space, to add to it, my parents kept a suitcase packed in the corner of the house, like, we're ready to go. We're ready to go back to Iran, or we're ready to leave. When you grow up that way, that sense of liminality, of neither here nor there, of where do I fit in this world, becomes very heightened.
Thank you for sharing. And I'm so sorry that's happening in Iran.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
this piece that you're speaking into is, I really deeply relate to what you're saying. Although I can't know what it's like in your specific context as I immigrated to the US when I was 10. I'm half
Mm.
Italian, half Brazilian. So
Wow.
that split that you're
Yeah.
speaking into of
Mm-hmm.
how do I reconcile all of these different identities that are in one body, especially
Mm-hmm.
when they contradict each other, or even worse, when they are at war, literally at war with one another, which, you know, thankfully it didn't go that far for me, but you sharing this, I'm curious to hear about what was your felt experience of that as a kid. For those of us who are listening, who can only fathom, we're looking from the outside in. And how did it then affect you or, contribute to the pain that you're sharing, this pressure that you were feeling as you were making your way up the ranks, figuratively speaking?
Absolutely. I think it's a couple things. First, I think that when you have that feeling of, oh my gosh, I don't know where I belong, am I safe here? That can lead to an intense desire to overfunction and overperform. And when you feel that your, for lack of a better word, residence somewhere is like, well, hey, you're lucky to be here. It makes you feel like, gosh, I've really gotta step my game up all the time because I'm a guest. I'm always a guest. I'm never the host. And then, my father said something to me. So of course we were in Minnesota, and then 5 years when I was 5 years old, 5 or 6 years old, I came home from school one day and there was a sign outside our front door and it said, "Burn this house, terrorists live here." Like, what? And my parents had experienced a lot of discrimination, racism in Minnesota. And so my parents decided to move to California. That's where a lot of the Iranian community was, Tehrangeles. People talk about big Iranian community in Los Angeles. But my dad didn't want to move to LA. That wasn't really his speed. He was not from the big city in Iran. So you know, this is the early 80s. He visited San Diego and he was like, okay, more my speed. Sleepy beach town reminds him he grew up on the Caspian Sea. It was much more resonant for him. So we decided to move to San Diego. But my father said something to me in that move, which I'll never forget. And he said, Pardis, people can take everything from you. They can take your belongings. They can take your home. They can even take your country. But the one thing no one can ever take from you is your education. And that really hit me hard. And I thought, oh gosh, I have to really excel and achieve. And then those same words were what led me to want to be a leader in academia, because I wanted to help others get that which can never be taken away. What I didn't realize, though, was that he was speaking about a framework of education that was different from what education later became. And so that those words always sat with me. You got to educate. So going to school became my job. Achieving became, for me, my currency, right? That became the coin of the realm, I think, for me, in legitimating, my right to be here, and that feeling of impermanence.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah. It's funny. My grandmother used to say something to me like that. She didn't make it, like, she ended up basically having 11 children starting when she was 17, and she had to drop out of school early. And she would always say to me, your knowledge, nobody can take away. And I
Yeah.
see the traces of the collective pattern of the immigrant child who really,
Yeah.
really wants to succeed. And so,
Yeah.
like, doubles down, like, let me learn English. Let me get it right. Let me, let me get so
Achieve.
good and so smart and achieve so much that now you can't see where I'm from anymore, or like it's bigger than
Yeah.
that. Does that resonate with you?
Totally resonates with me. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly what you're saying. Like, let me not only just learn English, what you said, like, but let me be really good at it. Not just
Mm.
learn something. Like, it wasn't enough for me to learn, Pilates and yoga. I had to get a certificate in like teaching it, I mean, that same double down that you
Totally. It
used.
wasn't enough for me to learn English. I had to become so good that everyone around the world thinks I'm American.
I thought you were American when I first met
Yeah,
you.
there you go. No, it's my third language.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's my second language. I learned English and French at the same time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
beautiful. So
yeah.
let's go deeper here, because this is really what you're saying is really powerful. And what I love about your share is the way it illuminates the mechanisms through which we become in our success. There's
Mhm,
the healthy fuel, and then there's the I gotta do this or else I won't be love fueled, which
mhm,
obviously as we mature and evolve, we look to transmute. But
mhm,
so you went into academia, and then you
mhm,
started killing it, and you started getting really, really good at it, and really
mhm,
succeeding.
mhm,
So talk to us about this, you diving in and what that started to look like in your career as you're
mhm,
creating all these things. But like,
mhm,
what can you tell us more about that dichotomy, that stretch that you were
mhm,
feeling inside?
mhm. Yeah, and full disclosure, I think that started actually. So when I was doing my PhD, I did my dissertation, which became my first book, on Iran and on sexual revolution in Iran. So I went to Iran for the first time in my life when I was, 21 years old. Went back to the home country thinking, okay, I'm going to go to Iran and here I'm going to fit in. And then something extraordinary happened. I didn't fit in there. Like, so I was too Iranian in America, but I was too American in Iran. So neither here nor there. And then I had gone to Iran to study the women's movement and got to Iran. And everybody, first of all, Iran has this huge youth population. And it's a result of, a lot of the population got wiped out the older population got wiped out during the revolution, the Iran-Iraq War. And then the regime implemented pro-natalist policies. So by the time I got there, 70% of Iran's population was under the age of 25. This is in 2000. Of course, I was 21. And I'm like, it's amazing. 3 out of every 4 people who pass you on the street is your age. I mean, it's incredible. And yet facing very high levels of unemployment, very disenchanted with the regime, highly educated, but no jobs for them. The regime did not resonate with them. And so I was in there watching them turn to the realm of the intimate, turn to the realm of sexuality to negotiate their citizenship. All systems had failed them. Their government had failed them. Their education had failed them. Many of them, family systems had failed them. And so they turned to community, to each other, as a way of negotiating their identity, of figuring out who they were in relationship to this world. And some of it was in and through intimacy, but all of it was through this movement. And I was completely bowled over, fascinated, inspired. I'm like, wow, look at here people who are finding their way in and through each other. And so I spent the next 7 years, back and forth between New York City and Iran. So I was studying this. It became my dissertation topic, studying sex and sexual politics and how people use their bodies to speak back to the regime. And so here were young people enacting the sexual revolution. And they really, I mean, it was profound. I mean, we sit here and we're probably like, what do for instance, uh, wearing red lipstick was illegal, but they would go out wearing red lipstick, even if it meant their lips were getting slashed. It was their resistance. It was a numbers game. They would organize. I talk about Summer of the Cockroaches. One of the summers I was there, prior to that summer of 2004, if you went outside in public wearing red nail polish or red toe polish, you'd have your hands or toes dipped in cockroaches. And then somebody had this brilliant idea. They were like, well, if we all go out with open-toed shoes and red toenails, there aren't enough cockroaches in all of Iran. So everybody did that. And then after that summer, we were able to wear open-toed shoes. So, I mean, these are things that people are like, well, who cares? And I'm like, it's significant because America's most elusive enemy is this regime. And look, young people my age are besting this regime. They are cutting it off at its knees by using their bodies to speak back. They're making change much more, effectively than military. So I became really interested in that. 2007. So I finished my PhD, my master's, got a professor job in Los Angeles, went back after I wrote my first book, and went back to the University of Tehran, where I had been teaching. And I was, in the middle of my lecture, and, the auditorium doors banged open. I was pulled off stage. That's a different story. 33 days later, I was kicked out and stripped of my citizenship, after, a uh, whole lot of pain. So now here I
You
am. I'm
stripped
not.
of your Iranian, which citizenship? Can you clarify?
Yeah, I was stripped of my Iranian citizenship
Okay.
and passport, and I was told I could never return. So here I was now, an Iranian without a country, and an anthropologist without a field site, like double whammy. So it's like, okay, who am I? But of course, we don't ever stop people like us, right? You're just going to go forward. You're going to double down. So it was like, I'm going to write 2 more books. I'm going to get tenure. I'm going to. And so I shifted my field site to Dubai. So then I, got a place in Dubai, and I started working on sexual politics, sex work, human trafficking in Dubai. And, I'd been very involved in policy, because it wasn't enough to be a professor. You had to be the best, and you had to be, in policy, and you had to do all the things. And so I was doing that and writing more and more and more books. And, I got tenure before I was 30. I was full professor. Again, that wasn't enough. You're just constantly succeeding. My personal life, I was having a lot of challenges. My first marriage lasted, only a couple years. I, got divorced when I was, we got separated when I was pregnant, got divorced when my daughter was 1 year old. I was a single mom. But I was like, nope, I'm going to keep going. And, kept succeeding, kept achieving my way out of the dissonance I felt. I still hadn't even processed the trauma of being kicked out from my home country. And then got into a marriage, got into a divorce, became a single mom, again. But yet then there was another book, and then there was another book, and there was another level of success and fellowships, and, White House, and foreign policy. And it was just, you just kept going. And then, gradually became a dean, gradually, started moving up those ranks, remarried. But again, because I hadn't, interrogated the things, I hadn't done the self excavation, I hadn't gotten to know myself and how I try to outrun my own pain. And then, I think I just kept achieving. And then I started looking around. I think, again, maybe it was age, maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was the fact that everything hit me at once. In 2021, I think I could no longer really outrun my anxiety and depression. I got divorced. I had, was moving from Arizona to Montana. That was when I really hit rock bottom, was in 2021. I was like, I don't even know who I am. At the same time, I was watching the education system around me, in many ways, collapse. Students were facing unprecedentedly high levels of mental health challenges. People were having to take out second and third mortgages just to afford college, and the workforce was like, they're not learning what we need them to know. And I started waking up to, oh my gosh, like, this system is broken. This system is irrevocably broken, because it's making people feel horrible. So the system that I've dedicated my life to something that's actually making not just me feel horrible and inadequate, but everybody, like generations of people. And oh my gosh, people are waking up to that in this country. So, then I started reading, and I was like, oh my God, 60% of Americans today, it's 70% of Americans believe college is not a good use of time, let alone money. First time in American history that the generation that's coming will be less educated than their parents. And I was like, it's broken. Like, there's something massive happening here, and it's not just me. So that was when I then went back to, like, oh my gosh, I have the tools. I studied consciousness. I've studied with shamans all around the world. I had, by this point, as a medical anthropologist, I've lived in 7 countries. I'd lived and studied in South Africa, India, Japan, like lived and studied with these sort of grandmasters. I'm like, okay, let's go back into my own consciousness and start to figure out like what is going on here. And like my own journey started mirroring the journey of so many young people around me. And as I unpacked and I excavated, I started to be like, oh gosh, there's a lot in here. Now, in this time period, I'd also learned my grandmother's story, my father's side. My grandmother was a sharpshooter on horseback, and she smuggled women from Iran to Afghanistan on horses by getting the horses drunk on homemade whiskey. Those women formed an all-female army that fought the Taliban in Afghanistan. So again, I was like, look at the power of community and look at the power of connected consciousness. It helped me make sense of, and I didn't actually know her story, until less than 10 years ago. And so that discovery helped me realize, okay, I'm not just running with intergenerational trauma, I'm also running with intergenerational strength. So I think discovering my story, starting to realize how many people felt like me, gave me the courage that I needed to step off that treadmill and then start what I do now. And now I run a mystery school, sort of a cross between a mystery school mastermind, but it's actually a place called The Bond, where we teach people how to be in conscious community and how we teach people how to be in relationships, because that's been the thing that both has eluded me and also fascinated me. When people get into really tough situations, it's actually their bonds, their relationships. Maybe it's turning to the realm of the intimate. It's full surrender to a collective consciousness. That is what allows people to become the best versions of themselves. So I think it was like going through that journey. I know I threw a lot at you there.
Thank you. What really, there's a lot that you have shared that resonates with me. And where I'm taken to is something you shared multiple times around, I kept trying to outrun my pain, paraphrased.
Mm-hmm.
I kept doing more, succeeding more, pushing ahead. Okay, this thing happened, it hurts, push. This other thing happened, oh my God, there's multiple things that are happening that hurts. Okay, but at least I can push and push and push. And I'm sure you're this doesn't surprise you, but this is not just the story of you, it's the story of many, many of us who walk this path of desiring to achieve and create impact in the world and coming up against our own trauma and unresolved pieces, and then kind of being forced to look at it for us to really make the impact we're here to make. You shared about having this aha moment with the system, but I'm curious about the inner workings of you realizing what did you learn you were actually running away from? And what was that moment where you cracked yourself open? What did that look like for you to even get to the place where you could be offering this mastermind with all of your wisdom and teachings now?
Yeah. Gosh, that's a great question. I'm curious how other people answer it. Like, I'm always curious what takes people. So I'm so curious to like we should have some sort of like book about it. Like what was that point when all of us
listen to all the episodes?
Yeah, I will.
You're gonna get a good
make a documentary.
Or call me. I've got a living library.
Please, that's such a gift to the world. Is anytime you feel like you're not alone, I think. So you asked, okay, what was I running from? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I think I was running from me. Yeah, I was running from me because, so of course it's not me. It's the story of me that I've created to navigate and allow myself to be in this world. It's the version of me that I've put out there. And the more that I tried to people please, I don't know if that resonates with you, this like, well, if I just please everybody, the less I recognize myself. And the more I tried to be what I thought everybody wanted me to be, the less I could find myself. And so I had this moment, and so like this is so fascinating that we're having this conversation because this is obviously what you do. I had this moment in 2021 where I was like, I don't actually know the real story of me. Like, I don't actually know. I know the story I've crafted to perform, but I don't know the real story of me. And yet I've written all these books about other people. I've written other people's stories. I've chronicled my family's story. I've chronicled all these things because writing is how I make sense of the world. For you, it's, talking to people and pulling their stories out. It's how you make sense of the world. I make sense of the world by writing. I write every single day. I write writing and riding. So I write and I ride horses. Like that's how I make sense of the world. And so I kept writing books and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm writing about things that I don't understand and trying to lose myself in other people's stories, and trying to understand how other people, make it work or don't, through either relationships or bondage or sexuality or super conscious or psychedelics or whatever it is. I was sort of losing myself there. But I didn't know who I was. I had this like really intense realization. This sounds so trite, but I'm like, I don't even know how I like my eggs. So I like went through this whole thing where I like made eggs 8 different kind of ways one morning and like put the plates all out in front of me because I was like, I've made up so many stories of me. I don't even know how I like my eggs. So I was like, well, that seems like a good place to start. How do I like my eggs?
I liked your
So I had
eggs.
to hard boiled.
Oh, that's so much.
Portable. It's portable. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I like the taste. I was like, don't like them runny. Like that doesn't taste good to me, But it sounds so basic. But down to that level, I didn't know me. And so here I was teaching people about relationships when I wasn't even in a good relationship with myself. So yeah, I think what cracked me open was, I met and started working with a shaman and started dancing with the things that I had studied a long time ago that had fascinated me. But I started dancing with this other realm and this other approach and realized, first of all, there's an absolute intersection between sex, psychedelics, and, consciousness. But also realizing that these are the absolute best vehicles we have to turn inwards. And until and unless we start to get a handle on our inner state, nothing in our external state is ever going to make sense. Like until we stop the suffering inside, you will never be able to outrun, or you can never be able to run enough to outrun your pain. And I realized that I had spent all my life focusing on the external world, and what I needed to be doing was paying attention to the inner world. And that was a huge eye-opener for me.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So practically speaking, it's what you're sharing around focusing on the inner world. And because that is the real shift and change. This is, paraphrased a million and one ways. It's what our enlightened masters have been telling us for eons.
Yeah.
I'm curious about you, Pardis, the human. What did it look like, practically speaking, for you to make that shift within yourself?
I think for me, I had to really significantly change my life. And first of all, I think one of the things about academia is you're trained to critique rather than being curiosity. So that was the first shift. Get curious rather than critical. You're trained in duality. You're trained good, bad. This is good. This is bad. This is, and as opposed to this is. Stop labeling everything. You're trained to judge. And you're also, as a young person, I was also trained to judge because judgment was how I could get safe. It was like, okay, friend or foe? Are you going to attack me or are you not? But judgment is one of the biggest walls and barriers that we create to feeling that oneness, that collective consciousness. As long as we're in judgment and mirroring, those are the two big walls that we have to punch through if we ever want to get to know ourselves and how we relate to the world around us. So I had to drop the criticism. I had to drop judgment, including judgment of myself and judging myself through other people's eyes. That was my biggest one, was like, I judged me by how you are responding to me. I used to do that. Like, it was like, so that was exhausting. I mean, I just was like, I'm not doing that anymore. And when I dropped critique and I went into curiosity, I started realizing, wow, there's a lot of people who are in a lot of pain because of that approach. And we got to stop doing that. We got to stop teaching young people all the ways in which they have to be in division, in competition, in disconnection. I mean, all the things, because it's not working. We're raising up generations who are in more and more pain, just like I was. So, I had to really shift that mindset. And then I had to really start asking myself some hard questions. Like, every single thing that I said and did, I was like, why are you saying that? Why are you doing that? I mean, it was like the mirror had been so close to me. I had to literally like pull it back. I had to like pull it 6 inches back to be like, first, like, let me see. And then let me get curious about why I'm doing what I'm doing so that I could keep coming back to my center. I mean, there was like a good, I would say I was in the, spin cycles in the washing machine for a good 2 or 3 years. And it wasn't until I finally stepped down and stepped out of the academy a year ago that then I could be like, oh, okay, this is the washing machine. Like, I'm out. Now let's look inside again and figure out, without all the titles, without all of the accolades and accomplishments, who am I? And that's kind of been, that dedication to finding my center and my anchor has really been a huge part of this process.
Beautiful. Thank you. And, when you speak into this washing machine process, can you define what you mean when you say that? And what was the difference between washing, washing, and washing again, and washing again, and washing again, and actually being able to catch a break and find stability in your life? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I think the washing machine, first of all, I recognized I'd been in it a lot longer than I thought. And then I would sort of pop my head out and be like, whoa, there's like this whole other world out there to discover and explore. And then I also realized that I had people in my life who didn't even know the washing machine existed and had no sense of interiority and didn't want to even go there. So, what did that look like? I got divorced because I was in a relationship with somebody that didn't really like want to go there, that sense of interiority. I had to start flipping how I approached all the relationships in my life. We're taught to approach relationships very vertically as opposed to horizontally. So I'd been taught, power relationships, et cetera. I have 3 kids. I started relating to my kids really differently. I would pop my head out and be like, wait a minute, I'm parenting either the way I wished I'd been parented as a kid, or the way that I was parented, as opposed to asking them how they want to be parented. Like, I just have to reframe all that. But practically speaking, I was still like in it, where I was still in these leadership positions. And I felt like I was almost living 2 lives, like the public version of me, where I was like, yes, this is what we're doing. And yes, we're bringing in more students. We're starting new degree programs. But then the inner version of me, which was like, holy cow, I'm hurting so much. I feel my pain. I see all the things I've been trying to outrun. I feel it. It was like night after night of dark night of the soul. I think I cried for like 18 months straight. Like, I literally cried every night for a good year and a half. Like, literally. I would come home from work, make sure I had everything done, the kids, and at the time I was living with one of my kids and the other two were in a different state. And I started looking at my life like, how did I get here? Like, I'm not even living in the same state as my children. And, I would just hold it together long enough. And then by 8 p.m., I would just let myself fall apart because I was realizing that I'd become a workaholic. Work had been one addiction. Love had been another addiction. I had like love addiction, that I was like living through all these addictions that we don't really talk about. And so I finally realized like until and unless I step out of all of that, I'm going to stay in the spin cycle.
And then you stepped out.
And then I stepped out.
And then you stepped out. So I'd love to hear about that, because we know that on the other end of that stepping out is you creating this community that's really based on relationships and conscious community. And I'm curious about when you stepped out, what patterns of truth are you now able to see with clarity that you once couldn't? And how did that lead you to being on the mission that you're on today?
That's a great question. Well, I stepped into the abyss and it was so frightening. It was the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. People are like, oh my gosh, you're so brave. Like I've ridden horses into gun battles. I've Afghanistan, Turkey, Iran. I've had interfaces with Iran's morality police. I've been through a lot of things. And the hardest thing I ever did was step off the hamster wheel. That was actually the scariest thing I've ever done. So I had no idea what I was going to do. All I knew was I couldn't keep living that way. And I had no idea where I was going to live. I didn't know what I was going to do. So, I was like, well, my kids are in Arizona. I guess we're going to Arizona. So I left California, moved to Arizona. I remember I was moving in to my house in Arizona. And my middle son, he was 11 at the time. And I was trying to, hang a piece of art on the wall. And it was like 8 o'clock at night. And it was my 11-year-old and I were trying to hang it on the wall. And it keeps falling because it's too heavy for his little hands, And so finally it actually falls. And thank God it didn't hurt him or me, but it falls. And I had this moment where I was like, how is it that I'm 45 years old and I don't have a single person I can call at 8 p.m. to come and help me hang this? And of course I have friends, etc. But I felt this huge, huge sense of loneliness and stagnation. And I realized that, okay, I had been in this spin cycle and I'd been on this personal journey, but your personal journey hits a ceiling when you're not in community. And community is a force multiplier because when you come together to share your collective stories and your collective pain and you're finally seen and heard, that's when you form these really meaningful bonds. And actually, that's really what it's about is learning to bond and learning to be vulnerable and ask for help. And so I just remember that night, I'm like, this can't be. It can't be that we're at this place where these things happen. And I shared what had happened with some friends, and they're like, people were sharing that version. I had this one friend, and he's like, that happened to me with the TV. Like I was trying to hang my TV. I didn't have anyone I could call. I was like, you have a free pass. You can call me anytime, and it's so it. And then I kind of had to step back from my life to realize that I'd been relentlessly pursuing new ways of knowing and relentlessly pursuing relationships and the power of relationships with the self and with the community. All that had been the theme across all these books I'd written. And I'd turned to I've now been writing fiction. And I'd started writing this fiction novel, and it was at first when my agent's like, "What's it about?" I'm like, "Well, it's on 3 people who are on these spirit quests and they're trying to find themselves." And I was like, "Nah." By rewrite number 12, I was like, "No, it's actually about relationships." And I realized everything was about relationships, and that was what had been missing from all the systems that I had been trying to work inside of. So I basically decided I was going to create the thing that I most wanted, in the world. And then I took that to my writing, and I was like, okay, what's the thing that scares me most? What is the thing that I fear most about people learning about me? And let's put that on the page. So I kind of flipped everything.
What is it?
That I find relationships really, really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
feel
people think I'm, because I teach about them, I help people. And I actually do. I help people get into great relationships and great relationships with their kids. And I actually feel like I'm very good at parenting now, not before. But, being in intimate relationships is very difficult. I feel that now, if you had asked me 2 years ago if I would date me, I wouldn't have dated me 2 years ago. I would date me today. But man, did I go through hell to get here.
Mm-hmm. 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 I love that. Yeah. We were making a little, I forget if we were on record or before record when you were joking about how you rather have this interview than your TED Talks.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this about me, but my TEDx talk it's called An Unconventional Approach to Human Connection. So it's I really deeply resonate with what you're saying, and that's desire, that deep, deep yearning to understand and understand the beauty and art of relationship and how to move through it harmonically.
Yeah. I got to watch your TED Talk.
Yeah. Same. So,
well, would you say that your TED Talk reveals the real you?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
It was the best that I could do at that level of performance that I was operating in at that time.
Yeah.
It was the most of me that I could bring to the table with what I knew at the time, and I think it's like, it's easy to look back at it now and be like, oh, I could have done that better. I wasn't being authentic, or I was being performative here. But the truth of the matter is I didn't know how to let go of the mask. But what I was saying is still the truth of what I meant.
I love that.
Today.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. I mean, the same with me. What I was saying was the truth. I mean, it was what I had discovered. It was what I had learned. It was all the things. And yet it was still the mask. Yeah. It's so it's fascinating, isn't it? Yeah.
Mirror, mirror
How
on the
we
world.
do that. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Well, Pardis, you share that, now your focus is really creating conscious community. And I'd love for you to share, what legacy are you most committed now of leaving in the world, and beyond just your work, but in how you live?
Show up. Yeah. I'm trying to show up really authentically in the world. I'm trying to, even as I'm talking to you, I'm like, look, I'm just going to answer her questions, like, honestly, as opposed to be like, okay, well, what would she want to hear? Or what would the listeners want to hear? It's like, I don't want to do that anymore. I did that for decades, and I don't want to be that way anymore. I'm trying to show up authentically. And so I think what I want is to lead by example and hope that if I continue showing up authentically in the world, that more and more people will drop the masks and be authentic. And I think some of that is actually must be working, because I feel like I've called into my life, just the fact that we're having this conversation, such an honest conversation, Celine, with you. I think about the legendary tribe. It's the most authentic people. I feel like, and a group of us recently gathered in San Diego 2 nights ago, or 3 nights ago. It was Saturday. It was the day that, Trump attacked Iran, and there was a gathering of a bunch of the folks from the legendary tribe, as well as this other beautiful, beautiful community here in San Diego. I'm in San Diego now. I'm, visiting my parents. I'm also escaping the Arizona heat. But, it was devastating. I was on my way to the gathering when, the news of Trump attacking Iran hit, and I started getting calls and requests for interviews, which I did. And I thought, oh gosh, should I just go home? And, I'm probably not in a space to gather. And I was like, no, this is the perfect place to be. And I walked in, and I only knew probably a third of the people there, but it was like, everybody was like, how are you? They asked, there wasn't this need to perform pleasantries like, hey, good to see you. Good. No, it was like, how are you? are you okay? Like, I see your face. You don't look like you're okay. And I'm like, Trump just attacked Iran. And some people knew and some people didn't. And people who didn't were like, oh my gosh. And, then the community came together and we said some words and we spoke calls for peace and we said some prayers and we really, set intention for sending some healing to Iran, to the Middle East as a community. And that felt so good. It just felt like such a gift. So I feel like somehow, some way, me showing up as the authentic me is calling in people who are authentic and calling in a community that's dedicated to living, an elevated consciousness life, a better version of themselves. And I just think if more and more of us can wake up and be intentional about living in a beautiful state, not a suffering state, right? My teachers in India say there's only two inner states, a suffering state and a beautiful state. And if you can be committed and set the intention to wanting to live in a beautiful state and spreading that beautiful state, that's such a gift that we can give to humanity. So more so than my writings or whatever I do, I think that just showing up and holding that commitment and helping to build community around that commitment, I think is like the greatest thing.
Mm-hmm. I love it. As an only child who grew up as an immigrant with multinational countries, it's very soothing for my soul. And, I feel that as well, this need to, and this is what we get to experience as well with the legendary tribe, just this ability to be able to lean on each other and support each other. Even the other day I was having like a little bit of a meltdown. I was like, oh, what am I going to do? I'm so screwed. I don't know what to do about this. And I was like, wait a minute, hold on, stop. I have, like, metaphorically speaking, I've got a lot of people I can call to put the thing up on my wall.
Yeah.
People will do it. There's people that will come over and will put the nail in and the thing and rise it. And I think it's like the importance of, number one, being that community, but then also remembering and recognizing that we do have each other, right? And that's such important medicine. Beautiful.
Community is the best medicine. I love that.
100%. And, there's something you said earlier in this conversation that I can't get out of my head, so I'm just going to bring it through now, which is you said you spoke into the intersection of sex, psychedelics, and consciousness and how they're all like perfectly connected to each other. And I'm like, my little ears perked up. I'd like to know more, please.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's kind of what my discipline, medical anthropology, is really about, right? Is like, how do people and how have people across cultures and time for thousands of years, how have people connected their bodies, their minds, their souls, their hearts? Like, how have people rooted in and like gotten in there and done some of the, everything that we're talking about today is like self-excavation and self-actualization, so that, you can become that sort of, go into that oneness with your community, right? And your community is a force multiplier, but, you got to heal that relationship with yourself so that you can show up in that authentic way. And I think, to your point, now you have people you can call and who will help rise up that painting. So do I now. But part of the reason I didn't before is because I didn't love myself enough to even ask. Like, I didn't even want people to see, oh my gosh, she can't put an art piece on her wall. Like, I didn't want people to see that, right? So part of that is yourself. Now, thousands of years, people have been figuring out how to connect with themselves and then connect with other people in the world around them for thousands of years. If you go back, what is the one thing that people have been doing? What's the one thing that all the cultures? So I've, of course, studied Persian culture. I've studied, and how people connect and access their consciousness, realize who they are, and connect in. I've studied this, in India, in Japan, in Latin America. There are certain themes that come up over and over and over, right? When you look at the rituals and the practices, how people view and engage with sex, psychedelics, and the conscious, superconscious, sex, psychedelics, and the superconscious, how they engage with that. First of all, there's a lot of commonalities. So we talk about ayahuasca, for instance. It's becoming very, that's big. And we talk about, obviously it's rooted right now in Latin America and, Peru, and there's this long history. Guess what? There are records of 3,000 years ago, people in Persia drinking ayahuasca. It was just called suma. You've got things like that date all the way back. I've studied in India at the Khajuraho temples, which are all, these ancient temples. When you look at them, they're just carved different sexual positions. People across cultures have been using sex, the body, psychedelics, and consciousness activating, let's call them mystic technologies like meditation, whirling. I'm a Sufi, so whirling dervishes. People have been using all of these as a way of finding themselves, locating themselves, if you will, and then connecting in to a collective consciousness for thousands of years. Those are the intersections. And all of them kind of get you into this heightened state of connection with self, source, and your community. All of these are ways of tapping into this other realm and plane of consciousness. So psychedelics, sex, and mystic technologies, they all kind of elevate you to this realm of consciousness where you can start to root around and figure out, like, where am I located? How do I connect with people around me? And when you look across cultures or when you look across history, it's when people have woken up to that power and then the collectivity of that power that the most significant changes in history have taken place. And we're seeing it even in our lifetimes. The fact that young people created a movement in Tehran, actualizing themselves, often accessing these consciousness levels through sex or other rituals. They created a movement, and the movement was able to destabilize a regime that even the United States military couldn't. Like, there is something there. And when you look across history, there's examples of the sexual revolution in, the Czech Republic and in Weimar, Germany. You have instances of, revolutions, cultural revolutions that have been spurred by, psychedelics and consciousness medicine and have actually brought about regime change. I mean, some of the most significant transformations in history and throughout the world have come from people accessing this other state of consciousness. And that's what I've been studying.
Beautiful. That has got me very excited and curious to learn more. Well,
it's a rabbit hole, man.
I know.
We
can totally go down this rabbit hole and probably could for another hour because I've got so many more questions here, but I am conscious of time and our time together today. And so I will say to anyone who's listening, is like, but I want more. Well, this is great because then you can just go talk to Pardis. Now now you've got a really solid jumping point, myself included. Beautiful. What a fascinating story. Thank you so much, Pardis. It was really, really such a pleasure to get to know you in this way, like in real time. And, as we begin to complete today's conversation, I'd love to ask you a question that I ask everyone on the show, and don't even think twice about it. Just whatever comes through to you. Okay. Ready?
Okay.
What does legendary mean to you?
Community, collective consciousness.
Tell me more.
Yeah. It means so much more than Burning Man. Like, yes, Burning Man is 1 week, but what it means to me is a group of people that I can call when I need to hang up the TV or the art piece. Even if they're not physically there, I can call them and be like, this is hilarious. I just dropped this painting. Like, instead of sitting and crying by myself, that there are people I can call or message and be like, man, I just had this epic experience. Like, I want to talk about it with somebody. And have you ever gone through that? Have you ever done that? Or I'm hurting and I need to be seen because I can't see myself right now. I can't, that's sometimes the mirror comes back and it is too close. And you literally, like, I remember I had this favorite magician and he's like, I can't be a magician without an audience. I can't do magic tricks in front of a mirror. It's not, and just like a magician can't be a magician without an audience. This exploration of self can't happen alone. It happens as you relate to other people. We are who we are through intersubjective relationships with people, places, and things. The relationship I have with Legendary, I feel like helps me feel safe enough to keep pulling those demons out and knowing that there's a group of people that'll catch me almost like a magic carpet when it gets to be sometimes too much. They'll just hold that space for me.
That's a beautiful reminder for all of us. Anyone who's listening. Yeah, just know that if you're going through something like that, you are held. And let that be your sign to reach out.
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's a strong community, and it goes far beyond that 1 week that we're together in August. It's, I think Gerald and Maya Rose have done an amazing job. I think everybody who commits to this community, it is a force multiplier. I mean, I just think about all of the great things that just being in this community have brought into my life and have put out into the world. It also helps me remember to show up for others too. So yeah.
Beautiful. Well, we'll let that one sizzle. So, Pardis, thank you. Your story was so beautiful, such a transmission. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It was really great. You do a great job. You're wonderful. I can see why this is your superpower.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. So, Legendaries, this has been Celine DaCosta on the Legendary Podcast, and we will see you in the next enthralling conversation.